Yeah, man. So first and foremost, I want to say thanks for taking the time, coming to be on the show, doing all those things that the niceties of every show needs to start with.
Yeah, man. Well, honestly, and I mean, it kind of becomes a cliche when someone's on, but it really is my pleasure, and I really do appreciate the invite. And I got a rough feel for who you are on Instagram. I'm excited to talk to you. I can tell that you've got your mind right. You've got a really good positive message. So I really mean it when I say I'm happy to be here and looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. So I got given your book as a gift by a really good friend of mine, George. Man, I'm struggling with names today.
Is it
That's a good
Bryant?
friend. Yes, George Bryant. God, I struggled.
Nice.
George has been a really close friend over the last couple years, and this is one of the books that he turned me on to, and I dove into the audiobooks since that's how I manage things, and it's been really good, man. I
Thank
really
you.
have enjoyed it. I've done a lot of manifestation books and those type of things in the past, and gotten into that style of thinking and mindset and meditation, and I think yours bridged the gap between full kookiness that's a little bit too much for me and like some real world actionable items that you can take. And so I
Uh,
guess first and foremost, I would love for you to share a bit about what you do, what got you into this style of thinking.
yeah. Well, let's see how well I can do and not make it like a 20-minute answer, right? Because there's so much behind it. So my attempt to put a quick spin in, I actually learned about this almost 20 years ago. I learned about the law of attraction. And I mean, I don't know how old or young I look, but I was like a young, struggling on the upcoming entrepreneur back then, or at least I wanted to be. And I think a lot of people can relate to the idea that I was really just looking for the secret to success and happiness.
Mhm.
And law of attraction, to be really candid, was one modality of many that I was experimenting with and trying out and learning. And to be honest, Matt, it was very hit and miss for me. It was very inconsistent. And I would discover a couple years later that it was really me who was being inconsistent because I hit a really hard, not so forgiving wall about 4 years later, where, to be a little dramatic, I lost what felt like was about 90% of my life in 1 week because that business that I'd been trying to make work, after failure, after failure, after failure, I finally decided to give it up. And 3 days later, my girlfriend of 3 years broke up over text, over the frustration that I had been working so hard on the business that I wasn't giving her time. So I can't even blame her. So I'm not even blaming her,
Yeah,
although
right. I'm sure you're plenty accountable to that all now.
exactly. But regardless of level of accountability, it certainly was not a fun experience to lose my business and then lose my girlfriend a couple days later. And I think a lot of people can relate. I had to look in the mirror and be like, okay, what's going on here? Where am I going wrong? I've wasted my 20s and nothing's gone right. And I had this very weird simultaneous epiphany and moment of indignation because I was able to look back on those past couple of years and have this recognition that whenever I did, the manifesting methods or the manifesting techniques, whatever you want to call it, whenever I did it with any level of consistency, things were starting to change for me. But then I stopped. And, I kind of said, you know what? I don't care what happens. I don't care when it happens, how it happens, why it happens. None of the steps that they tell me in all those books. I'm just going to go all in with this 100%. And when I say all in, I don't mean all day, every day, because I also had a recognition of human nature, knowing that
Sure.
you can't be like, oh, happy thoughts all the time, because then you work so hard that you end up thinking negative thoughts inevitably. So I said, okay, let me do what I had been doing only consistently, which is 5 or 10 minutes a day of gratitude or visualization or scripting, which we can talk about. And it was like a movie, Matt, because like within 2 weeks, I didn't feel 100% better, but I felt way better than anyone with a broken heart had any business feeling. Within 3 months, I was a brand new, way better, way healthier relationship. Within 4 months, I was making more money in my life than at any point before then. And within 6 months, everything was different. I was happy and fulfilled. I was waking up grateful. I was in the best shape of my life. And I learned that whatever this thing is, we could call it the law of attraction or we could call it whatever we want. Whatever this thing is, I learned life through my life experience that it works when you work it. And what I really try to communicate in the book was, what is this missing piece? Because people stop, they get excited about the law of attraction, they try it, they actually begin to get results and then they stop. And I think if I could answer the question for myself of why I stopped and how to stop stopping, and if I could articulate that and make it user friendly and easy to implement, then it could hopefully live up to that title of the last law of attraction book you'll ever need to read, which I realized was a very bold claim, but I also realized there's 1,000 law of attraction books out there. If you can't say something new or bring something new to the table, why even publish a book?
Yeah, I love that, right? And like I said, the Joe Dispenza stuff gets a little bit too far into it for me.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas coming from the meathead athlete side of things that I am, I can fully understand, right, that it is the actions I take every day, that the movements I make every day is what's going to equal the progress I'm making. In the gym, that's what it's always equaled. As long as I'm intentional with my effort, I tend to make progress over time, despite how I feel the day of whatever the thing was. And so I
Mm-hmm.
can immediately put that into it. And I've, in my own history, right, like I can see where I've had benefits in my life and I'm working on myself and doing the journaling and doing all the other stuff, and I'm making progress. And then as that progress shows up in abundance of your life with opportunity, the first thing you throw out of the window is the practice that got you there. And I don't
Yeah.
know why that's such a human nature, right? But we do it with everything. We do it from our diet and nutrition to, as soon as we reach a point, we'll bail on it.
Yeah. And I have if I may, I have a theory about that, which I kind of articulated in the book. And, again, I realize the way I put this, I'm no psychotherapist and I'm not a psychologist or anything like
What
that.
is your background?
Say, well, so my background is, I mean, again, like I was an entrepreneur in the sense that I was actually to try to make money. I tried to get a comic strip into syndication. I wanted to compete with like the Garfields of the world, and that was going nowhere fast. But over the course of just trying to grow my business, I was getting better at marketing, networking, things of that nature, and I kind of fell in love with copywriting. And because I was on this self discovery and personal development mission, I also kind of fell in love with understanding human nature and human psychology better. So while I do not have a degree, I do have I hope, like a really insightful understanding of what we do and why we do it and what our motivations are, whether it's learning it from Tony Robbins or learning it from someone you've never heard of before, or again, just, learning from mentors. And I bring, I bring it all up. And by the way, I'm a huge fan of like copywriting, which I'm not sure your audience is basically, selling through words for lack of a better term,
Okay.
which is how I tried to write the Law of Attraction book, because I understood that, it doesn't matter how good the information or how useful the information is. If it's not convenient and easy and smooth to consume and you can't glide through it, well, then you're not really serving the reader. So I actually almost wrote it. A lot of people don't realize I wrote it like a 200-page sales letter, but rather than selling you on like, this new jigamabob that you're going to get this product or this new program, I was basically selling people on their ability to use the content and why it was going to help them, with the hope and understanding that if they just had enough enthusiasm and enough comfort in it, and they used it for even just a month, that they would get something out of it. But really, just to cut back and answer the question of like why we stop all the time, even when it's working, is my definition. I think we have three minds. We've got the conscious, we've got the subconscious, which most people are familiar with, but I see this third mind that I call the ego, that's right in the middle, that's way stronger than the conscious mind, but luckily for us, not stronger than the subconscious. And the ego, as I define it, only has one job in this world, and that's to keep you alive.
Right.
And it's constantly scanning the terrain and saying, okay, my person's alive right now, which is bad news if you're not happy with your life, because whatever your money problems are, whatever your relationship problems are, even whatever your health problems are, excuse me, your ego's looking around saying, okay, my person's alive right now, and I don't want to risk the status quo of what a change might do in terms of the possibility of lowering their probability of survival. Because everyone wants to be rich and famous, or some people do, right? But for all your ego knows is when you get rich, you're going to get a stalker, and that's a threat to your survival.
Sure.
For all your ego knows is when you get money, relatives and friends are going to come out of the woodwork and try to sue you for all your money, take your home away, threats your survival. So this part of your mind actually loves you. It's a misguided attempt to keep you safe, because it doesn't care about your comfort, your fulfillment, your satisfaction, only your survival. which therefore, you're trying to break that 5 to 6 figure mark, or 6 to 7 figure mark. Until you do it and you're there long enough for your ego to realize that you actually are still alive and safe, it's going to fight tooth and nail to maintain the reality that it knows keeps you alive. And that's why we struggle, because it's, again, stronger than our conscious mind and keeps us stuck in place.
Now, do you think part of that is, once kind of the ego gets out of, hierarchy of needs, right? Like where, our normal food, water, shelter are taken care of, and we start actually now needing to focus on self actualization.
Hmm.
That one's really tough for the ego, because then that means, A, we've got to admit some things need to change. So there takes a certain bit of awareness there. And then there's, the ego knowing that, well, we're not struggling with the main things that keep us safe and alive. So stay here.
Yeah, and it's also, this is why I always say, like, I define the ego in my own way. Like, I mean, I know that stuff exists in our mind, somewhere in the conscious and subconscious, but the way I kind of look at the ego, and by the way, this is an oversimplified way, because I found when I wrap my head around it this way and other people wrap their heads around it this way, it just makes it easy to take action. I only view it, and we could throw any other word other than the ego. I only view this part of the mind as just being concerned with you being alive and looking. It doesn't matter whether you're popular or unpopular, whether your hierarchy of needs have even been met. It's like, okay, this person's alive, and I can see when they have destructive relationships, they're still alive. Therefore, I'm going to hold them back in this way. I can see when they're only making 50 grand a year, even though they desperately want to make 150 or a million. I can see they're safe. So I'm going to do whatever I can to keep the pieces moving in place. So they're doing that, because it's so funny. The ego, as I define it, it's so simplistic in its way of viewing life, but so devious and so intelligent about playing on our own insecurities and fears and doubts, knowing us so well. So it knows how to manipulate us. It just doesn't know how to project reality or probability of how things are going to play out when we get what we want.
Mm. And so actually putting yourself into the right frequency vibration of being who you want to be, and taking on those habits and becoming that person actually leads you to becoming that thing.
Yeah, and that's where, like, why I was so fast to say, like, the subconscious mind is more powerful, and this helps. When you are great, when you have gratitude and you're visualizing, you're scripting, you're doing all these things, you're putting your subconscious mind, but also, if we want to go down this train, this line of belief, your energy, your vibration in this new mode. And it's like, once you do that with a certain level of consistency, it's like you fighting a grizzly bear is like your ego fighting the subconscious or fighting the universe. It doesn't matter how much it wants to hold you back at that point, it can't, because there's a stronger force there. So it really comes down to this simple thing. And I always say, like, 5 or 10 minutes a day, because and studies have shown this. They've hooked electrodes up to people's brains and they've done their studies. Through all the different studies, it's documented that positive thoughts and emotions are anywhere from hundreds to possibly even thousands of times more powerful than negative thoughts and emotions, which is why 5 to 10 minutes a day is going to have a certain level of influence and power and momentum to it, even if you have a bad hour later on, or you have something that's bothering you. Like, over time, it's like, when you work out every single day, I've seen people say, and I've been through it myself in the past, progress is really, really slow until all of a sudden it's really, really fast.
Yeah. And then it
And
shifts again.
yeah.
Like it goes both ways, right? Like there's that point of inflection, right? Where things boom go. And then there's a plateau again after that that's going to require an extra amount of effort to get a different response. I mean, from the physical side of things as an athlete, like, we get to choose the things we want to adapt to. And
Hmm.
whether that's, making my muscles grow by stressing them out a little bit and being uncomfortable so that they show up to do more work the next time, right? And doing that for a decade is what makes people strong.
Yeah.
In the same way that manifesting this type of stuff, this isn't a 2 week problem. This isn't the short term answer. This is the long term game of believing in yourself and actually believing in yourself and telling the universe what you want.
Yeah, and it really is a daily practice, which is why I'm such a proponent of this should not be a chore, it should be a choice. It
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be something that you have to do, it should be something that you get to do. I often use the example of, like, you tell a huge football fan that they've got Super Bowl tickets, they don't be like, "Oh, you mean I've got to take the long flight and I've
Right.
got to wait in the hotel and I've got to bake in the hot sun waiting for the game to begin. Like, no, they don't have to go. They get to go, which is why, like, you find any kind of method, gratitude visualization that you genuinely enjoy. All of a sudden, this isn't something that's like it's hanging over your head. It's something that you look forward to every single day because, you know, and again, I think people that understand fitness don't understand sometimes there is a lot of progress happening that you just don't see. And when you don't see it, it's really hard to continue if you're experiencing pain, for example, like with working
Mhm.
out. I have the luxury of writing a law of attraction book where I'm like, listen, there's not even pain here. Like you don't even have to go through the pain. You just have to have fun for 5 minutes or 10 minutes a day, finding a method that just feels good for you.
Amazing how hard it is to talk people into that.
It is, and that's because the ego. Because well, also it sounds too simple. It sounds too good to be true, which is why I also tell people, listen, let's pretend I'm lying or I'm
You
deluded.
prove me wrong.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah, how about that? If that's what
let's
you
say I'm
need,
just making this stuff up,
prove me wrong.
but just 5 minutes of gratitude is a win in and of itself, even if no quote unquote result comes afterwards, because that's 5 minutes where you're not focusing on the stress that you're going through with your spouse or your kids or your job or your business or the state of the world. No matter what, you're getting a win just by doing that. It just becomes a question of, can you give yourself permission? Can you love yourself just enough just to do that? Give yourself that gift and that privilege every single day.
So, I mean, outside of just the ego, right? Because clearly this isn't something that happens to everyone. And I mean, I think that there's some big portion of the society you grow up in, the time you're around, and the people you surround yourself with, and the luck of the draw of being born wherever you're born to parents that either love you or don't, or whatever the mixed combination of that equals.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we struggle so much with being positive to ourselves? Like, why do we have to think this can't work?
I believe in general it's cultural, because like bad news. Let's just use an example. Like bad news is out there so much because numbers show that it sells. You sell more newspapers or you get more ratings with bad news. So it's not even a thing where I don't even want to go like down conspiracy theory territory. Like, though this isn't on purpose. Let's just say there are executives in movies and TV and magazines and everything, and they've somehow, some way found their way to this recognition or this understanding or even just this assumption that negativity makes them more money. It's built into the culture, and I have an iPhone 11. But I remember there was a time where everyone, like when the new iPhone came out, I think they're up to 14, where everyone was like waiting on these long lines because the marketing was created that people feel incomplete if they don't have the latest iPhone. They feel
Yeah,
incomplete if they don't have the right clothes. And
the marketing is incredible.
it is. And I'm going to get a little controversial here, man. This all comes down to like, human based, hierarchy needs of like survival and replication. Um, people care about status because they care about, I'll put it delicately. I'm not sure, the language on your show. They care about hooking up.
I don't.
So they're going to
We
hook up more
don't
with
have
a,
any filters here, man.
all right, cool, cool. Like, people want to get laid, right? They
Mhm.
need that watch that looks good, or they need that dress that looks good. They need the makeup in a certain way. They're pounded over the head by society that like a complete life fits this very specific or these very specific definitions, this very specific criteria. So there are cultures in the world, and I say this very hesitantly because I don't know all the nitty gritty, but there's cultures in the world that do not have these struggles because they view and they experience life differently. They're still human beings. They still have a mind, a conscious, an ego, a subconscious, but they're in a different culture and in a different mode of being, and therefore in a different vibration. Where it's not about the latest iPhone, it's not about the horrible thing that happened on the news, it's not about the need to make a certain kind of money or live in a certain house or be in a certain way. It's not about the incessant feeling of not being enough, and that I believe is a huge contributing factor to why we inevitably and inadvertently fall into these traps for ourselves.
With those traps, right? Like I've been fortunate enough to get to travel quite a bit, and then the last couple months traveled a little weird. Got to spend some time in Uganda and spend some time around a Batwa pygmy tribe, um, and all of that resonates. Like this is a group that's struggling to get clean water and really get anything going, and I wouldn't say these were unhappy people.
Mm-hmm.
They had community and had love and they all felt purpose. Now they're still dealing with the very low end of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Um, but it seems like the more developed a place get and more abundance that's actually available, the worse we're at handling it.
Yeah. Well, there's that old saying, and I'm gonna butcher this, but good times
Yeah,
make weak
soft
men,
people.
I think.
Yeah,
Um,
something like that. Good
yeah,
times make soft,
it's like
soft.
this circle until like there's hard times and then and life goes. And I mean, I think so. The human spirit is incredible, and we have so much more ability of in terms of coping and dealing and suffering, for lack of a better word, than we give ourselves credit for. But when you grow up in the world where you're not struggling for clean water, it's like an impossible thing to deal with dirty water.
Yeah.
Whereas if that's all you've ever known, you find a way. I think humans, wherever whatever zone they're in, they find a way to make something work, regardless of happiness. Because I mean, we're talking about happiness here. People find a way to work. Even people right now that are listening, and they've wished for the past 15 or 20 years that their lives have been better, have they ever stopped and looked around like, wait a second, I'm still alive. Bills are somehow still being paid. I'm still eating 3 squares a day. I still have clothes on my back. I still have a roof over my head. Maybe life sucks. Maybe I hate it, but I'm still there. So we all have an amazing capacity. Like there's so much abundance that even in the midst of our unhappiness, we have this standard of living that kings centuries ago would not even have had.
Not even close. Not even close. The fact that I'm in an air conditioned room and I can control the colors of lights and have food delivered to me here and talk to someone across the world to get my job done. Like, I don't have any problems.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
that feeling that you talked about that I think is really important for people, and at one of the lower ends of even starting this type of thing, right, is that accountability. And that's really what I work with most of the people I coach on, is taking accountability for your life, of like, look, this has either got to be important to you or it isn't, and find something else that is. Because if you've spent a bunch of time in this expectation of what your life and success is supposed to be based on your parents' ideas and what culture you came from and what town you grew up in and everyone else, you build a life for someone else. And then all of a sudden realize you're trapped. And most people are way too scared to ever burn it down to start over.
Mm. And it's funny because as much as people hate their lives, they're addicted to struggle. And I don't remember where I first heard that term. Someone brilliant once said that one time, so I can't take credit for that because it is such a brilliant, insightful thing. Like we don't want to burn down these lives that we hate because secretly they're so familiar to us that there's a part of it that we love, and there
Mhm.
is this fear, there is this uncertainty, there is this doubt that and there's this fact the fact also that a lot of times people they do I don't even say have the courage but they have the stones to kind of ante up and do something and then they fail and then they never want to go through it again.
Well, I mean, look at what we see with people. I mean, at a really base level, right? With sobriety,
Mm,
and what you learn from even something as simple as that is everything's got to change. Like, you can't, it's not going to work, man. You don't get to hang out with the same people that you were still partying and drinking and doing drugs with, and then you be sober.
mm,
If you have that ability, you didn't need to hit the brakes because something fucked up was happening in your life.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and being able to take accountability for that, like that I've got to be able to make these changes in my life, and that I'm worth making these changes, and that me being happy is worth the struggle and effort to get there. Because whatever we're currently doing long term isn't going to be it.
yeah. And I call this I've never said this before but it's kind of like paint can theory. It's like you have a can of white paint. You put one drop of blue in there, you've altered the color. So it's like, that's like, are you in this can of sobriety or this can of not having that? Versus like you said, that the people you hang out with, the places you go to, the choices that you make in your life, because there's a level of familiarity there where it's like it sounds ridiculous, but if you drank every time you watched a certain Netflix show, just watching that Netflix show, there's something in you that's just triggering that there's a connection in your
Yeah,
mind,
of
like you're going to
course,
be
this
inspired to drink.
Pavlovian response that we can all build in ourselves. I'm not sure Pavlovian works, but I think you
Hmm.
grasp what I'm going with.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, one of the things you talk about in the book, right, is this, being in higher frequency in gratitude and practicing that. I know that took a long time for me to really switch over to. I thought, oh, this kooky bullshit. Like, coming from the hard end athlete asshole side of me, just couldn't quite make heads and tails of it until I got to a point where one or two things that were something I deemed impossible changed, and I was able to say, like, well, fuck, why not try? How about before I have an opinion about a Tony Robbins book, maybe read one instead of just letting my own expectation of what I think it's going to be. So even when you're talking about something you said a second ago, right, of um, even there's a big difference in trying to get away from things that you don't want in your life, like this drinking, and then there's a big difference in the mindset of I'm moving toward what I want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And those are big different frequencies.
Yeah, there's a huge difference between trying to win and trying to not lose. It's a complete, and it all comes down to perspective. And I think, and I don't think I articulated it this way in the book, but there's a level of confidence and self-knowing regardless of what choice that you're making. When you're making that choice of moving towards something, it just feels different. Life feels different. The incremental results that you get, they have an extra level of hope or power to them. Whereas if you feel like you're kind of stuck in the old way and you're just trying to get away from it, you're just trying to hold back defensively, then the little indicators that things are working, they almost feel like near misses for you versus actual things that are actually clicking in place and happening for you. And it really is an amazing thing if only people would just have the level of confidence, enthusiasm, and self-commitment to just go there. There'd be so much more momentum to every little step on their journey for themselves.
And a lot of that comes to the mindset and perspective on your own of being able to choose gratitude and abundance instead of lack and scarcity.
Yeah. And I realize, by the way, that gratitude is a very loaded word. Everyone listening to this right now, I pretty much guarantee this is not the first time they've heard the word gratitude. And because of that, there's a certain level of like calling bullshit on it, not even understanding like at least the way I'm articulating gratitude, because it's one of those things that it has to be experienced. It has to be a thing where you can really just sit down in spite of whatever in your life you don't like and look at things that you are grateful and actually feel genuine gratitude for them being okay. Not even as a way of trying to magically fix the world, but as a way of just giving yourself the gift of experiencing that emotion, of having that experience, of being able to appreciate. And I said this in my latest book, Just Feel Good. Just the appreciation for your heart that's been beating in your chest every single second of every minute, of every hour, of every day, of every week, of every month, of every year, of every decade that you've been alive. Like think about right now, like put your hand to your chest, anyone listening, your heart, that heartbeat that's been going on for years and years and years. How could you not be grateful for this amazing gift, even if you're not enjoying every day of your life?
Right. It's done nothing but work for you.
Nothing. It never asked for anything in return. I mean,
Right.
what like unbelievable, like every person has this. Every person has their heart tirelessly and selflessly just doing this for them nonstop. It's an amazing thing if you really let yourself think about it.
So when you first started introducing this into your life, like what was the gratitude practice that you started to, or abundance, or I guess what led you to this to really go down this path?
Well, I mean, so again, for me, like, back when I first learned about it, I'll answer this question a couple ways. When I first learned about it, it was just an experimentation process of, reading other books or watching other videos or whatever, and like, how are they telling me to do this? When it came down to that point where like I really turned things around, it was really just so I'll teach one of my methods because I think it really articulates the direction I took with this. I call this the Timelapse Method, and this is where like you think of 15 things that you're grateful for. Five are from your past, five are in your future, and five are in your present, and five are in your future that you're looking forward to, and they're written all out in the present tense. I'm grateful for my apartment. Like, all right, am I talking about past, present, or future? You can't even tell because I wrote it in the present tense. So you write these 15 things out and you just jumble it up. And maybe, from the financial side of things, I'm talking about a specific salary that I'm grateful for. Or maybe in the current things, I'm talking about a specific salary or specific level of money that I have in the bank. Or in the past, maybe I'm just grateful for my first paycheck or the first significant paycheck or the first job I was given, whatever I can think of that's actually relevant and important to me. And I take that list of 15 things and I jumble them up So maybe the first thing is the present one, and then there's a past, and there's a future, and another present. And I just, one at a time, I read through them, and to whatever measure I can without forcing it, I feel gratitude for that thing. And it's really cool because 2/3 of that list is real. It either happened or it is happening. And therefore, since humans don't psychologically downshift very smoothly or very easily, when you're reading those future things, the confidence and enthusiasm that you had for the other ones almost like carries over. So it's this wonderful thing of going through 15 things that you love, even if they're not technically in your life yet. And again, for me, it's like, what did I want? What did I have that I could appreciate? So, from the romance side, I'm grateful for even that relationship that didn't work out well. I'm grateful for the love that she felt for me for any point in time, because by doing that, I'm reaffirming the psychology and the vibration and the energy of anybody having that level of attraction and love for me. And then, of course, like in terms of the future, it's like, okay, well, what are the things that I wish would be different? I'm grateful now for the person that, appreciates my work ethic. I'm grateful for the person that can actually call me on my bullshit in a way that I don't ignore the relationship and that I engage with her. Like, I'm grateful for the ways in which she makes me better and in the ways that she's better than anything I've experienced before then.
Yeah, those are really similar shifts. I had gone through kind of a dark spot in a divorce and kind of hit detonate button on an old life when I realized that if I don't, I'm probably in big trouble. Just
Mm,
I knew things weren't going to get better going down that path, at least not for me.
yeah.
Um, Starting to add this practice of abundance and gratitude, man, it's there's such depth to it, and it's I mean you can find it on anything, and I love that idea of like almost overwhelming use of gratitude to force in like the stuff for your future that you want to have happen.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like, why not make it fun, right? Like, it's
right.
supposed to be fun. And it's supposed to be it's supposed to have the option of shifting your paradigm. I never want to make it a requirement, but there should always be on the table. Like, quickly going back to, again, like a divorce or a bad breakup, part of my letting go process is also being grateful for her happiness,
Yep.
because when she's happy and I could be happy about her being happy, it helps me energetically disengage from her, opening myself up to the next better thing and the next better person.
Like I know like a younger version of me would have been really shitty through the divorce. No matter what the cause of it would have been, I would have somehow been concerned with winning
Hmm.
whatever that situation is and but whatever definition of winning that would have meant to me. And luckily where I was when we went through it, yeah, nothing but love for this woman that I had spent 13 years of my life with, this time that I got to share with her that I'll never get to share with anyone else, and also I wouldn't want to. We got to become adults together. I got to have all this new gratitude for the worst ending, worst moment in my life, essentially, right? This ending of a thing that I really never expected to go away.
Yeah.
And that changed a lot of perspective to me too, of realizing how temporary everything is, especially in the long run of our health, our life, what our options are. That, like, I'm so grateful that I get to do a podcast for part of what I do for a living, but there's going to be a point in my life when I'm not podcasting for a living anymore. Like,
Hmm.
I don't see myself in my 70s and 80s probably doing this. I've probably found another thing that I'm trying to get better at in my life at that point that serves me better. Um, but man, being able to find the gratitude for even this thing that I'm in love with, knowing that it'll come to an end. And so that makes it special how temporary the time is you have with it instead of the fear of ever losing it because it's going to go at some point anyway.
Yeah, it really is. It really, because no matter what, nothing, like you just said, nothing is permanent. Like, so what better strategy, for lack of a better word, than to enjoy it while you have it? What better thing to do? Like, do you want to dread the thing that's going to end at some point that we don't even, and for most people, fortunately, we don't know, or do you want to have like, what's the perspective that's going to really make sure you enjoy to make the most of it, which also, ironically, or maybe not so ironically, leads to a richer experience as well.
Right. Yeah. Otherwise, you live in lack of what's not perfect or you're stuck in the comparison. And we all know I mean, that quote, comparison's a thief of joy, like always looking at what other people have from the scarcity mindset instead of abundance. I mean, scarcity is saying, like, well, it must be nice to be them. They've sold all these books and figured things out. And things are
Yeah.
going great. Yeah, I bet they are telling me to just be positive.
And
Or,
mhm.
yeah,
That's it.
or I can look at it as, holy shit, here's proof of a thing. Why don't I try it?
Yeah. And I don't recommend this as a normal practice, but for anyone, it's always good to. And I've never taught this before. I'm making up this method right now, or making up a name for it.
Hell yes.
Um, everyone says the grass is always greener. Like if I'm ever and if I've ever been in a place where it's like it's really been difficult to be grateful for my life, sometimes I'll play the grass is always crabbier game. Meaning, like, and I know, like, that Andrew Tate's big in the news right now, and it's like, for
Exciting.
all the money he has, and I think there's certain people that look and they stick at all his money and his influence, and they're jealous of that. It's like, listen, that dude's got threats on his life. He's got legal problems, and
That
in
dude's life
Romania,
seems like
like,
a fucking bummer.
yeah, it's like, would you trade like for the kind of struggles he has? Would you trade it for his money? Because I'll tell you something: if you would, you could probably get it. Like if you
Yeah,
would really
probably,
trade for
right?
these things, you can get all the things that go with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I was lucky enough to realize a few years ago that that's not the thing that does it for me.
Mm,
And I think that's a really important one with the accountability, especially when you go in to start designing this future that you're trying to put together, right? Through manifesting it, that like you need to know where you want to go.
yeah, you and you need to know that it is possible despite how things look, because it's very easy to know where you want to go and say, oh, it's impossible, and then just stop. It's like you've just fallen into a trap. You've
That's
just
a
fallen into
trap.
your ego trap, which is like wants to keep you alive. And that's not to say that it's automatically easy, because I don't even know these goals that we're talking of here. But listen, if let's say I want to make $100 million.
Well, nothing's easy.
Say again.
Nothing's easy.
Right, right. Now it's simple. I wouldn't call it easy, but it's simple.
Simple. Well, so it's not. By that method, we should all be very lean and never overeat. Like
Yeah.
pretty
Well,
simple
again, it's like
stuff.
it's
Like eat
simple
the
to not do
amount.
it. It's just not easy to do. Yep.
Not fucking easy. Diet's really simple, not easy.
Yeah. And like celebrate that. I would recommend people celebrate because there's other people that are trying to make it easy, not realizing that it isn't, and they're wasting their opportunities. Where if you can just appreciate the fact that it's not easy, but there is a simple line there, and also that it can get easier as you move through. You just your levels of endurance upgrade, your skill levels upgrade, your understanding. Anyone that's followed Alex Hormozy, the things he knows about business, he's forgotten more about business than I'll ever learn. But he wasn't always that adept. Like he had a lot of struggles, a lot of failures. He had to lose or fail his way up to doing that, just like anything else. It's not supposed to be easy. Otherwise, everyone would do it.
Right. And we've switched to such a group of people that need an immediate fix now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've switched to a culture.
Right.
We're a culture. We're an instant gratification culture, and you like again me. When I wake up, and I don't recommend people do this, the first thing I do is I look at my phone. And the reason I look at my phone, by the way, is because I'm kind of like neurotic about like wanting to be the author that answers people's emails. So if
Sure.
someone like left an email overnight, there's just something in me that I need to get over, that like I don't want them to wait even another hour. Like I want to answer their stuff. But I recognize, as I tell you this, Matt, I recognize it would be a healthier thing for me to spend my first hour without my phone, just
Yep.
taking a walk outside, just breathing, just being. I recognize this. I know this. I teach this. And yet, even like I'm just like anybody else, where,
The thing's incredible.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with like Terrence McKenna. Um,
Oh, the name's ringing a bell. For some reason, I'm sure if I saw him, like it would all lock into
so
place, but
he
I've heard that name.
he wrote a book, Food of the Gods, and I'm butcher. I need to revisit this chapter of it, but it kind of goes through drugs and psychedelics throughout culture and what was used for what and X, Y, and Z. And one of the last things he talks about is, of all the, in the 1960s when psychedelics became into popular scene and we were starting to test and study on them and then stopped and made it very, very illegal. Um, we were seeing some interesting changes, scientifically with people. And part of why it got shut down, right, is like there wasn't any control method. Like this wasn't going to be a thing you could sell very well pharmaceutically. It doesn't lead well to needing continuous care X, Y, and Z.
Mm.
And so it's not a financially great crop, I guess you would say. Um, but he talks about like the biggest control that's ever been created is through TV. Like this is the drug that we managed to get out and put in everyone's home, and they'll just stare at it. It's fucking incredible what we do to stare at that colorful box and how we can't help it. And they've
Yeah.
gotten so good at it that they figured out, it'd be better, right? Like, what if they carried a TV with them at all times? Do you think they would just hold it in one hand all the time?
Yeah.
Yep.
Like on the subways, just hold it up to their face. And
Just
it's funny,
disconnect.
like, I'm older than people realize. I remember back like watching
How
cartoons
old
on a
are you?
Saturday morning. I'm sorry.
How old are you?
I'll say I'm in my 40s.
All right. Yeah,
uh,
I turned 40 this year, so
cool. I definitely got a few years on you.
good.
I remember when they say like we now return to your regularly scheduled programming. It's like you're being programmed, and it's television. They're like
Well,
they
and
say
look at
it in
what
the
they do
words.
though, right? Like it's consistent. They've
Yeah,
got you for X amount of time every single day. Of course this works.
yeah. And there's an old Family Guy where they made a joke of how like they would like blink images into like a thing, and they slowed it down to make it funny on Family Guy, where it was like an episode about cigarettes where like the screen just stopped and this guy was like smoke, and it was like so clear that he was doing it, like you saw it. But the joke was like usually there's, and who knows if this is true. Again, we're in conspiracy theory land where I don't know the answer. But it's like you wonder if all those images, you wonder if certain messages are blinking that your subconscious mind is catching. You're like, there really is always a possibility of it.
Well, for me, right? Like I do think until you reach a point of self-awareness that you want to take the wheel and change the things that you're not that interested in continuing to do in your life and
Mm,
actually have the awareness to say, "Oh, I can do that." Like I can stop that habit and take a new action and that creates a new thing. So up until that point, I think we are some combination of what we're exposed to, whether we're aware of being exposed to it or not, or we chose it or didn't choose it. And we pick left or right of more or that, of less or that based on our experience with it. And so, I mean, of course, TV and the marketing and everything there shapes us. And something you said really early on in the show was, how much more response we give to negative stuff and
hmm
how much now, our media companies who are marketing agencies, just like anyone else, and news sources and everything else, right? Like if it's on TV and there's ads that run, they're running an entertainment channel. Like their main goal is not to provide you unbiased information. The main goal is to run ads and keep you watching it. And we've only shown that we will watch shit that we dislike more than we like
Yeah.
forever. In the same way that we handle trolling comments, the same way that we handle anything else, they always get more attention from you than the ones that pat you on the back. But again, that's a choice. And whether or not, we give more attention to that negative solely based on ego trying to keep us safe or evolutionary over time, we needed to keep an eye on the negative things because those chances are would kill us, but we don't have real threats anymore. So we don't know how to disassociate this not real threat from an actual one that we would feel because this is all we know anymore.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if there's much of a question in there. But
Yeah.
we're
I mean, we'll
so
say this: if I'm understanding what you're saying, it's like we don't need to run from this. We don't need to be scared of this. It's just it's part of the way things are. It's like take someone they've got a perfect six pack, and a 5-year-old child gently throws a tennis ball against their stomach. Listen, that's an attack if you want to call it, but it just bounces off them. It's not a big deal. So it's like I would challenge people, reach a level of self-awareness and consciousness and love for yourself and self-worth and self-value where even if you're watching this stuff, it doesn't as negatively impact you, regardless of whether, there's a nefarious, motivation behind even putting it in front of you, or it's just people trying to make money. It's like, you build yourself up. So that's just like a tennis ball thrown by a 5-year-old, and it's not a big deal.
right.
And
And I think that is the big awareness of being able to choose whether or not I let it affect me. And also then being able to decide to choose what media do I want to be affected by if everything I'm consuming does affect me.
yeah, and just realizing that you are at choice, like
Yeah.
realizing that it really is on you.
I mean, that's for me the biggest like base level of abundance I fall to is that everything in my life is a choice. Whether I want to have this conversation with you or not, I don't have to, right? Like there's consequences for some of the things I don't want to do, but physically have to do shit I don't.
Hmm.
Like no one's going to come in here and hold my hand and sit me up in front of this and beat me if I don't do it. So it's
Right.
got to be important to me and me alone. And so that being able to hold yourself accountable to those goals has got to be the first move. Like that's got to be the first thing you can do and decide that like I'm the one making these choices, that everything in my life is this way. The obligation that I feel to this old bullshit, I can let go of and start actually creating the new me. And I do love how your book lends on to start doing that and start
Thank you.
building that process.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I don't even articulate this way. I'm very careful with words because I understand that words impact people a certain way. And I realize even the way I say it, sometimes people are like, well, I don't know if I agree with that. But like for example, I never tell people, even if it's true, I never tell people that something is their fault. I tell them that they're responsible for it because like responsible, able to respond. It's like, that person broke up with you. I mean, I know when I'm broken up with, I do know it's my fault. But I was like, I'm responsible. Like, even if I didn't, it's still on me. I'm the one that has to respond. I'm the one that
You
has to get
still
in
chose
shape.
to get in a relationship,
Say again?
right? Like at some point, you did choose a relationship.
Yes.
So you're still responsible that it didn't work out. There's two people there.
Yeah. You're responsible. You're part of it. And, this goes to your love life. This goes to your business. This goes to your fitness, your health, like all these different pieces. And like we are, whether we like it or not, we are all responsible, whether it's our fault or not. We are all responsible for everything that happens to us, whether we invited it or not, because no one else is going to respond for us. No one else is going to do something about it for us. This is why I'm so big. And this is why I really lean in direction with the book of just being proactively grateful, proactively visualizing or scripting or like whatever works for you, just proactively spending just a few minutes a day focusing on the life that you want, knowing that it's going to get you there faster, it's going to get you there easier or get you there better. And it's going to be a hell of a lot better for you than not doing it and just succumbing to the constant, inundation of negativity in everything that you're surrounded by.
How do you I guess for a lot of people listening to this, right? Like I think one of the more interesting things I found in your book is just the really up forward approach to manifestation of money.
Hmm.
The manifestation of, I mean, that's what I think most people are going to talk about, and even feel weird saying it out loud. Thank you, universe, for the $10,000 you brought me this month, or 20,000, or whatever you want it to be. Um, how do you get people to start leaning into that confidently? Because it seems so crazy and just wishy.
Yeah. So I hope the way I do it is just by making it simple. Like the thing is, so you can give a perfect example, like the term "thank you," the words "thank you, universe" for blah blah blah. Someone might be hearing that right now and they're cringing. They're like,
I'm
"Universe."
sure I would have at some point in my past.
Right. So this is where I say like, it's not, you don't even have to worry. You don't have to say thank you, universe. You just have to use whatever words resonate and work for you that you could actually be grateful for that thing. Like me, I don't, I mean I could, but if I think saying thank you, universe, for my health, if that feels just ridiculous and cringy, I'm like, okay, well, what can I do that okay, I just say, you know what? I'm really grateful. Ugh, you know what? Grateful. That sounds icky too. I hear The Secret and all these other people say it. Okay, let me back up. You know what? I'm really happy that I have enough health within me that I can start working out again consistently. I'm really happy, and I really appreciate the fact that even as I'm eating some of these foods that aren't good for me, I'm able to sneak in some better stuff and get myself closer. Like I'm going to change the words, and I encourage people change the words, change the methods, do these things. So I guess to as a roundabout way of answering your question, I think what I really do to help people is I show them how to make it their own. I show them how to do this in a way that works for them, where they don't even have to believe in the law of attraction. They don't have to care about the universe. They don't have to to, maybe the term God resonates with them more, or maybe they're atheists, which is a whole different conversation, and they just believe in their subconscious mind, their psychology. I'm a huge proponent, and through the book, hopefully do that of showing people, okay, here's what to do, and here are the different options for doing it. Find your flavor of ice cream. Find your way that you like on this list, and do it that way. I like to open a door for people just to make this accessible. And if I can make it accessible and then they see it's enjoyable, I hope that they'll then have enough enthusiasm, which will lead to their momentum, which will lead to their results, which will then bolster their enthusiasm and keep the train going.
I wanted to share with you, man. Just as a practice of the manifestation of money.
Mm,
Um, my wife and I, in the last 2 weeks, I guess, I've been adding more cardio in and walking as I'm getting ready to do this 27-mile hike with some friends. And so in the evenings, we're walking around the neighborhood and decided to kind of stack on top of that, is because that's already good for us. Like, I know going to walk in the evening and being outside as the sun's going down and getting fresh air, all these things are already a win. These are already operating as like a better version of me. And then add on top of that, you know, us talking about manifesting things while we're on this walk and what we're
mm,
creating. And then we're now picking up trash in our neighborhood too, because we'd like our neighborhood to look better. And I'm not interested in waiting for someone else to make a decision. I'll do it. That's fine. I'll take accountability. I'd like it better. This is how I would like everyone around me to act. I'll act this way. Um, and so on the walks, we've been consistent with this, thank you universe for the money we'll find.
mm.
And so every time we've done the walk, we found money. So from a penny that's barely recognizable, that I had to really make sure is still a penny and not something else, to I found a wallet with $70 in it.
Wow.
And getting that to, working to get that to the owner, if he'll answer his Facebook, the only place I could find him, it's not about whether or not I got to keep the money, but it's that the universe answered. And it's been a really neat thing. Then I had money show up from a tax return that I didn't expect, and had other things continue to drop in. It's been a really fascinating couple weeks doing it. And so I just
Nice.
wanted to share the confirmation, I guess, at some point. Now, I'm not sitting on the couch and just saying these things and not taking fucking action. These pennies aren't finding me, but the opportunities are there.
Right. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And one thing, and I don't know if this will bolster it, or what this will do, is like for me, when these things happen, because they happen for me also, I always have an opening, like, it does happen, but it doesn't have to happen. Because sometimes, like, so one thing I do every day, I'm grateful for the good news today. And almost every day, I recognize good news, but sometimes a month later, I'll realize that good news happened and I just didn't realize it. So sometimes things happen for you when you don't even know. And it brings me back to that scene from the Matrix where Neo first meets the Oracle and she says, "Don't worry about the vase." And he's like, "What vase?" And he knocks over the vase because he's looking for it.
Sure.
And she's like, "Oh, it's gonna bake your noodle. What if I didn't even mention it?"
Right.
It's like, when we do this, are we making our subconscious, our very powerful subconscious mind, more alert and aware of spotting opportunities, of spotting money that's always been there? Or are we reorganizing the universe, like literally rearranging the energy of the universe and the structure of the universe that we live in? And the thing I love to tell people is, like, it doesn't even matter. All that matters is you do this thing and things start happening. And I'm a
Right.
huge proponent of just like leaning in, and to me, what you're communicating here is you and your wife right now, you're just in that sweet spot of embracing the situation in the way that works well for you. And no, not the way, a way, because there's
Right.
countless ways this could be working for you. You happen to be in a way, or even like a number of ways, where it's clicking and you're flowing. And because you both seem so like you're enthusiastic enough, and you're just open to it, it's bringing things in way more swiftly for you.
Well, look, when I let go of the reins a few years ago, I'm thinking some of the kooky stuff was not, not valuable to me. Lots have changed. That being able to kind of address the subconscious, I think, is a really critical thing,
Mm,
because I do think it has such a power. I think it's Buddhist, I believe, but there's a parable, which I'm sure I'm way off base on, that has to do with like the elephant and the rider being the ego and the elephant being the subconscious. And so a lot of times when we're in struggle, it's when those two things aren't aligned. And so getting the ego back aligned with where the subconscious really wants to go. And one of the ways I find to be able to direct the subconscious is through this and through meditation and through getting present and through being able to have that deeper awareness of what it is we want, why do we want it, and why that's important to us, and so why will we take these actions every day.
Yeah. And
And
it's
so
all a very straightforward thing. I always try to tell people, like, me. So the other, I think it was either yesterday or the day before, someone messaged me on Instagram and like, hey, Andrew, just curious, like, what do you tell someone if they're doing these methods every day for 30 days and nothing happens? And I thought to myself, okay, go down the road of saying, well, how do you know something didn't happen? Or do I go
mhm,
down the road of during these 30 days, are you like gritting your teeth and holding things back because you're trying to force it? But instead, I was just like, you know what? Let me answer this way. Right now, and I didn't say this specifically, like it might change, but right now where I'm in my life, I don't even keep score of like it's been 30 days, it's been 10 days or whatever. I
right.
just do this every day and I know stuff will show up in its own time in its own great way, and it does. I don't even keep score of like it has to be in the specific thing. And maybe for certain people, deadlines and things like that work. And that's the point. For certain people, it works. For certain people, it doesn't. Right now, I'm just in that headspace of things are working out. Things are going great. It can always be better, but it can always be much worse. And I choose to keep moving forward in this direction as long as I'm so inspired. And when there comes a point that I need to shift my approach because it occurs to me to do so, well, then I've reached that evolution point. But it doesn't mean that I'm not evolved enough right now and I'm not open and ready and willing for a good enough life right now because I'm really happy with my life. I can't complain.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And you're already dealing with, so someone who has the question of like, well, if I do this for 30 days and I didn't notice anything, you're already dealing with someone who's battling it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, any of us who've made big change in our life, and that's, part of what my podcast is about, Not Dead Yet, is this. There's a moment I think that happens with everyone where you have to take accountability and realize that the life in front of you, you've got to decide how you want to shape it and not just ride out with what you've been doing or stop complaining about it. But you can't have both.
Yeah.
And so seeing that change, right? Like already the mentality of like, well, I'll do this for 30 days. Like, no, you're just going to do this now. Like, because the new version of you does this. Like, it's important because the better version of you is the guy who can, like, you've already picked up the book, you're interested. Like, quit fucking looking for a way out in the first couple pages. And I do want to say how much I really enjoyed the structure of the book, from combating all of that on the front end and then just giving really simple practices of how to applicably like do this in your life and take action on it.
Thank you, Matt. I'll tell you again, like, from the copywriter's headspace, but also from the looking back on those 4 years specifically that I kept screwing everything up for myself. Basically, the way I structure, I'm so glad that you enjoyed it and you recognized it. It's like taking all the buyer's objections, like you're trying to sell a
Mm-hmm.
car, taking all their objections and just obliterating them up front before even showing them the car. That was like my goal of like, okay, listen, I know you've either been through this or you're going to go through this because I went through it. The more personal something is, the more universal it is. And that's really what I did try to do the book. Like, let me just knock out all the bullshit that we use to get in our own way, so that finally when I make these very easy simple methods to follow, people will just be like, they feel like they can breathe. They're like, okay, I can do this. This is fine. And it doesn't even have to be, like you said, it doesn't be 30 days. Like, I can do this every day because this should be fun. And I like it in the beginning of the book was like, imagine a magic ice cream that gives you the perfect body of your dreams. There's no negative qualities, only positive, and you only need to take one spoonful. So you don't even need to eat a whole quart, just a spoonful. No one's going to say no to that, assuming that they like ice cream,
Yeah.
replace it with cookies or pizza, whatever. And that's the point. This daily 5 minutes of gratitude should be that spoonful of ice cream that you just get to enjoy, that you look forward to, that it doesn't take too long, it doesn't interfere with your schedule. Like, there's no way you can easily argue your way out of just doing this and enjoying it. And that's really the goal for this. Make it simple, make it accessible, make it user friendly, because it's really about making it, I mean, I don't want to say impossible, but certainly very improbable to fail at this.
Man, as we kind of come to a close, my morning routine has always been a very big part of me being accountable and being focused throughout the day and really being positive. I know that if I kind of get up and do my gratitude journal and I do my time in the sauna and I do the cold and I take time to do cardio and move a little bit, like the rest of my day is already stacked for a win. I always look at that as like putting my own oxygen mask on first before I'm trying to help anyone else. So, what do you recommend for people who are trying to add something very simple to their morning to get a kick out of this before they pick up a book or try something new, if this is their first experience with even hearing something like this?
Yeah, so I'll give two if I may. One will be a method for my book, but another will be like the thing I do every single day personally. So one thing they can do, I call a gratitude blitz, and this is where take your phone and set a timer for 1 minute, but preferably like 3 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever, and until the timer goes off, try to think of things to be grateful for. And again, it can be, your heart that I was just talking about. It could be other parts of your body, your hands, your feet, your fingers, your toes, your legs, your arms, your sense of taste, sense of smell, sense of touch. It could be your best friend. It could be your mentor. It could be every person that ever did you a favor. It could be the device that you're listening to this on and how that device serves you in other ways. Whether it's got your banking app on it, it's got your dating app on it. It's got your workout app. Like, how is this device serving you? Like, do a gratitude blitz, because 20 seconds into that, you're like, yeah, whatever. But as you get 60 seconds, 80 seconds, 120 seconds, and you really realize there's more in your life to be grateful for and appreciate than you usually acknowledge, you're just going to feel better. Another thing that I do, I guess, is similar. The thing that I do every single day, and it involves somebody else, which is why, don't feel like you have to do it. But I pull up my phone, I pull up the recorder app, and, in kind of like that time lapse style with, past, present, and future, I I just talk for a few minutes about all the things I'm grateful for, and I send that message via text message to a friend across the country who does the same thing for me. Sometimes I do it first, sometimes he does it first. Whoever does it first inspires the message of the other person. It's a really cool thing. But either way, it's all about just taking a few minutes out and just appreciating and feel and just giving yourself the space and permission to feel good. Nothing complicated. There's no magic way of doing it. There's no wrong way of doing it. There's no perfect way of doing it. It's just doing it, enjoying it. And I would recommend people just give that a shot and notice. I'd love for you to buy my book, but you didn't have to buy my book to get this. You didn't have to spend a single penny on this because you just heard it right now. So this is free. This is yours to use and try. I just recommend people give it a shot and just see what happens, because the worst case scenario, you'll take a few minutes out of your day where you otherwise would have been stressed or worried about something in your life, and you'll do this instead.
Yeah, or just been scrolling on your phone, staring at shit that doesn't make you happy,
Yes.
which is a weird thing we choose to do a lot of.
Unfortunately, yeah. Again,
And
part
look, I
part
think
of
evolutionary wise, right, with the phone, we're going to have to figure it out. This is still such a very new technology for us as a species that we just don't have a handle on it.
we've moved way faster than we're technically ready for, in my humble opinion.
Well, I mean, what? And we still don't have people who've had entire lifetimes with real internet.
Mm,
I'm 40 and I'm one of the last groups that had analog youth that kind of got the transition. Like by the time I went to college, everything was high speed internet, and so it's going to be interesting to see, when somebody's in their 20s and their grandparents had high, always lived their life with it. I think we're so much further down the rabbit hole that way that we're going to have to have sorted some things out. There's some rules and laws and things that we need to figure out how to operate in this space that we just don't have a handle on yet. We
yeah.
don't know how to manage it or how to protect people from it.
And it's funny because, like, even thinking about it statically, like having internet your whole life, that's not even accounting for AI and the changes in me, and also like the unforeseen. Like, okay, AI we're aware of now, even though we don't understand where that's going to go. But then, what's the unforeseen
It ain't going
technology that will
away.
accompany the internet?
Yeah, it ain't going away, man. The AI thing is like once that toothpaste out of the bag, like we're not putting it back.
Mm,
Like that's not how it works. We don't ever get to. And also, I have a lot of fear for a group of people that would just say, "No, this is bad. We're not doing it." Like that's also a really bad move. It's got to be a thing we sort out because if we outlaw it, then that means only people on that side of the law use it.
Yeah, yeah. Anyone with like a limited fixed point of view on either side is going to get chewed up, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting thing, especially like playing with ChatGPT or anything else that I've been using, to help with work and help with writing and help with anything else is brilliant, especially being able to have it as help for proofreading or help grammatically or as a thesaurus or any other type of journaling prompts have been really fun to use. And I keep looking at it and thinking that this is the Atari version of what we're dealing with and what is the PS5 going to be. I
Mm,
just
hmm.
don't know. Like it's going to be indecipherable. Like there's going to be a point where that becomes really tricky to decipher what was really genuinely written by a person and what was done by AI. And so, man, does that change how we start communicating? Do we go back to communicating more interpersonally and less via text and less via social media and less via those things? Because I can't fake it if I have to like hold a conversation with you and show comprehension of ideas.
Yeah, it's going to be really weird. And again, we don't know how things are going to play out. Only the only thing that I can guarantee people is that there's an element that we just can't even foresee. That's the only guarantee I can give people. There's an aspect that we just don't know because it has not evolved yet,
No,
and
I
and
think
who
it's
knows what
going
that'll look
to,
like.
my hope is it really changes our education system.
Hmm.
And we switch from being people that really value being able to memorize material to being able to actually comprehend and use what they learn.
Yes. It's like it's not just knowing the information. What can you do? How do you apply the information?
Yeah, how did you integrate what you learned into your actual life to benefit yourself, or did you just learn that you know this equals that, but you can't do anything with it?
Yeah.
I think that that's going to be a really interesting one. I think it changes how people are going to apply for colleges with essays and how any essay test get answered. Do people now have to do an actual verbal exam again? I hope so,
It'll be
because
interesting.
I think the lack of interpersonal communication is part of what's got us into this weird spot. Is people don't know
Yeah,
how to
well,
communicate.
yeah, and we're a little off the rails, but just because it came up, it's like, dating is different now. Like first there was dating sites,
I'm
and
so
now
stuck.
there's dating apps,
I'm
and I
so
think
pumped.
now
I've
it's gonna be
never
people getting their dates with artificial intelligence help, and when you finally get in person with somebody, there's gonna be this awkward of like, what do I say? What do I do? Because the person that you projected to be is it's a different human being with
well, and the other
unfortunately
person's playing the
no
same
more
way,
more charisma. What's that?
and then the other person's playing the same way.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
what
And
a
I'll tell you as a
interesting
quick
thing we're
aside, I
gonna
remember
bump.
like even like I've used dating apps before. My goal, if there was a connection, was always to get to an in-person date as soon as possible because I recognized that any chatting that we were doing was a false reality and we were getting to know each other on a level that wasn't true. So it's very important to me like let's find out right away if we like each other in person because all this other stuff is just it's a distortion of truth and reality, and it could only negatively impact any connection that we might have. But that's
You
just
know,
me.
and I think that speaks to guys like us, our age, who've already dove into some awareness and wanted more actual connection with people in our lives.
Yeah,
Man, coming up and thinking that that's the normal way that people meet really changes stuff.
yeah. It
I mean, look, I
also
don't
leaves
know
a
if
few
going to the
people to,
bar was the best way as I got introduced to dating, but we did that for a really long time.
yeah. And the really interesting thing here is I think if people can find a way to almost keep it a little old school, they will separate themselves from the pack. Like 5 years from now, the 21-year-old who can get a date with somebody in person faster is going to look different than everybody else who's just fussing around with chat GPT answers and stuff like that. Like it comes to a point where like you almost go analog, you're going to make yourself look more advanced in certain
Yeah,
contexts.
I really hope that puts us more into actually being in community,
Mm,
like being around people in person.
you and me both. Time will tell.
That's been the biggest one I see that people struggle with, right? Is like pretty naturally you lose communities that you come with from, high school ends, and there's, someone else is making an end point on that transition in your life, and then typically college, and then you make friends with colleagues or any of these other type of things, and or your friends slowly dwindle around your relationship that you have with your partner, and then you realize that you're the only two people anyone knows.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so why leave that thing? Like, people get stuck and terrified of that because they don't know how to make friends. I've had numerous times in the last, 10 years of my life. I mean, luckily enough, I'm not an introvert and did outside sales for 10 years. So communicating's easy business. I don't mind the word no, it's fine. Um, but I don't have a problem now saying, like, hey, man, I'd like to hang out more. Like, do you want to be actual friends?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really rare for people to do that.
It's a lost art. So anyone listening, like, this is actually, it's going to be gold in terms of relationships and success if you can be the person that can actually connect with people and is happy to do it.
Yeah. Well, dude, I thank you so much for your time. If you got anything you want to plug, I know you've got some other books that I need to catch up on. And
Yeah,
we can
well,
do.
first of all, just thank you again, Matt, for having me, and thanks to your audience for listening. I'm hoping my part. I know your part of the conversation was useful. I hoping mine was really helpful for people as well. If anyone wants to check out what I'm doing, I guess the easiest website to go to is awesomemarvelous.com,
It's great.
because it's got the links to the US listings of all of my books on Amazon, whether it's the last Law of Attraction book you'll ever need to read, my new book Just Feel Good, or my marketing book, 3 words I use to sell 100,000 books. But it's also, if you don't want to pull out your wallet, it's got a link to my YouTube channel, so you can check out how I'm doing stuff there. And I'm sure you've got a worldwide audience, so anybody that's not in the States, you could just check your. I mean, you could use Awesome Marvelous for like the titles of the book, but you could just check your local Amazon or your local Audible, or for the audiobook, your local Apple Books, and wherever you are regionally, you'll find the books easily there as well. But hoping, whether you spend money or you get content for free from me, I'm just hoping that it continues to serve you.
Dude, thank you, brother. I really appreciate it. I hope we maintain touch.
Me as well.
I'm going to shoot you my phone number and things like that. So
Awesome, man. Looking forward to
thanks,
it.
man. I appreciate it a ton.
Thank you, sir.